How's it going, everybody? This is John Little Fox. Here's my channel where I talk about anime, video games, cartoons, most notably Sonic and Ninja Turtles. And today, I'm here to talk about my Mount Rushmore of Black Superheroes DC Edition. So, of course, like last time I talked about Marvel, this time I'm about to talk about DC. So, let's get right into it. So, I have 4 candidates for my Mount Rushmore, and that's Steel, John Henry Irons. I actually first learned to steal because back in the day I used to have like some encyclopedia books back when I was a kid of like DC and Marvel stuff, mainly DC. So I had one of my first encyclopedias was actually a JLA book of the DC, like it was like a JLA guidebook and stuff. It was a really cool book, but I remember like learning about a bunch of characters that like of course that I already knew about anyways from the cartoons and then some. And then I learned about other characters as well that I had no clue about. Like, for example, Steel being one of those characters, or Aztec, or Kyle Rayner, and so on and so forth. But yes, Steel was one of those characters and stuff. And I noticed that his name was John Henry, and I'm like, oh wow, John Henry. From like the folktale, because yeah, if you know like your little African American folktale heroes, John Henry was the obviously, he's a folktale hero, meaning he's not real, he's just fictional, but he was actually this guy. And I always loved this story too, how he was like this guy who was like a railroad worker, and when they tried to introduce trains and stuff like that, like the locomotive, and tried to replace people and stuff like that, John Henry had challenged the locomotive and actually beat it due to sheer willpower and his strength and tenacity. But unfortunately, his heart gave out and he died. But I think that was that was a pretty good story though, of like hard work and effort and stuff can definitely go a long way. And I was like, oh, so did John Henry die and then go into the DC universe and like become Steel or something? But nah, obviously he's named after the character, so yeah, so it makes a lot of sense. But anyways, yeah, but Steel, I gotta say, yeah, him. I enjoyed his episode from Superman the Animated Series. He was cool for a bit inside Justice League. They didn't really utilize him as much, but yeah, but he was a pretty cool character and stuff. And currently, right now, I'm actually watching Superman and Lois, and I'm definitely enjoying seeing Steel get down inside that show and stuff. He's actually pretty cool and whatnot. I'm not really a huge fan of the origin change where he's actually married to Lois Lane in an alternate reality where they had a daughter together, and Superman had killed her and destroyed their world. So I'm not a huge fan of that, but I mean, it's growing on me. It's definitely way better than My Adventures of Superman, where they just made Steel, for some reason, the black man who's supposed to be like very intelligent and very athletic, and they just made him like, oh, he's overweight, and he's wearing a generic robot suit, basically. I'm like, oh my god, can't get any lazier than that, right? But anyways, yes, Steel is on my Mount Rushmore. Second to that, I have Vixen and stuff. I actually like Vixen. I think she's a very creative character and stuff, with her powers and everything, and the name Vixen. Like how, yeah, and she's very beautiful and stuff. She was part of Justice League. I know in the show she was kind of just a love interest for Jon Stewart, and kind of in this love triangle between him and Hawk Girl, which obviously ultimately John ended up with Hawk Girl anyways. But still, a pretty cool character though, nonetheless. And then on top of that, she had her own show, which was canceled because of the low viewership, because it was on the DC Universe app, or what was it, the CW? No, not the DC Universe app. It was on the CW app or something. So they didn't put it on like TV or none of that stuff. So that was kind of like why it flopped, really. But still, it was what it was. I wish they would have actually given Vixen more time compared to other characters and stuff, because she actually does have some potential. I mean, look what they did with Flash, Green Arrow, Supergirl. I'm like, you're telling me you can't just do that with Vixen? Black Lightning. I mean, it's not that hard, but okay. But anyways, and then on top of that, Vixen was also in the comics and stuff. She was also, of course, a part of the Justice League and stuff. I think she, I could be wrong. Didn't she not have a relationship with Martian Manhunter? But it is what it is. I guess he liked a little bit too much chocolate, But if you get the joke, you get the joke about Coco and Martian Manhunter. But anyways, moving on. So, up next on my Mount Rushmore, I have Cyborg. Yep, I had to put Cyborg on here. You know how much I like Cyborg. I think he's a pretty cool character and stuff. I'm not saying that he's a character that can stand alone by himself. Never said that. I know some people are like, I'm not really, but I think Cyborg's a cool character. I like his origin. I like the drama with his dad and stuff, Silas Stone, and all that. You know, like Cyborg was originally like, you know, he was homeschooled by his parents and stuff. He was born with like what, a 150 or 200 IQ and stuff, and you know he felt like, you know, he was like, his parents treated him like a guinea pig and all that, so he kind of rebelled, and they decided, all right, well, we'll put you in a school so you can make some friends and stuff like that, and you know, kind of, yeah, etc. And then, you know, his mom died. You had to read the story to understand, but he has a lot of resentment for his dad, which later on, you know, he had outgrown, or he had moved on past that after his dad had passed away. But you know, you got to keep in mind too that his dad, Silas Stone, did create Titan's Tower, and he also did help out a lot inside the Justice League movie and stuff, which I think Cyborg's arc inside Justice League was probably the most interesting, even though I don't really approve of him. Really, I don't think he should be a part of the Justice League because he's more of a Titans member, but it is what it is. But, you know, New 52 stuff. But anyways, yeah, Cyborg, I always thought he was a pretty cool character, and I liked how the 2003 Teen Titans show, it really put me on to a lot of characters that I didn't know about, besides, you know, of course I knew who Robin was, but I'm like, oh, this is his friends? Beast Boy, Starfire, Raven, Cyborg? Wow, I never knew. You know what I mean? Like, you're kind of learning new things over time and stuff, but it was like, yeah, but those were some pretty cool characters and stuff, and they weren't just like, oh, they're just straight up sidekicks and stuff or whatever. They're teenagers, teenage superheroes and stuff, and they're pretty cool for what they are. So I gotta appreciate that. So yeah, I think Cyborg is a pretty cool character, so he's definitely on my Mount Rushmore. Then next up I have Static and stuff. I think Static definitely deserves to be on my Mount Rushmore. He had his own show. He has his own comics and stuff. He is Milestone's baby and stuff. He's like their own version of Spider-Man. I love Static's origin, where he was coerced into a gang because he was bullied a lot back when he was a kid, or back when he was in high school, because, you know, he goes to inner city schools, and you know, this is the 90s, so that's not always the place, you know. So he was bullied by his, school bully, who was also a gangster and stuff, and then a rival gang kind of coerced him into joining a gang, and he was contemplating on shooting his bully, but decided not to, and then, you know, the Big Bang happened, and then, you know, he got his powers, and so did a lot of his other so-called villains later down the line, like his bully Hot Street, or Ebon, and so on and so forth, you know. But yeah, and not to mention, Static is a very intelligent character, which I don't think a lot of the animated stuff, or a lot of people know. But he's also like, you know, Static has a genius level intellect. And they kind of showed this a little bit in the earlier seasons of Static, where he was kind of, you know, doing some like really intelligent things, or he was put into a different school full of brainiacs and stuff. But yeah, Static definitely does have like a very high IQ, where he's very intelligent, where he can make stuff or whatever, you know, kind of like his friend Richie from the cartoon. But they kind of gave that to Richie to kind of give him a little bit more of a purpose and all that. So it made the most sense, at least when it came down to that in the cartoon. But in the comics, it's a little bit more different than that. But anywho, but yeah, so that's my Mount Rushmore as far as my favorite black superheroes goes. And then some honorable mentions, I have John Stewart, the Green Lantern himself, you know, my first Green Lantern. John Stewart's okay, but he didn't really make the Mount Rushmore. Mainly, he doesn't really have a whole lot of story arcs like that in the comics. But he's, you know, he's a pretty cool character. You know, he's part of the Marines. He's also an architect as well, so which explains his creativity, etc. You know. And then of course there's Connor Hawke, which not a lot of people really talk about Connor Hawke, but Connor Hawke is actually the son of Green Arrow and stuff. You know, and he actually, when Green Arrow had died and stuff, Connor had taken over and became the Green Arrow during the 90s and everything, you know, and he's also technically a black character, you know, because he's part black, part all this other stuff, because, you know, yeah, but yeah, still counts, you know. And then of course Jefferson Pierce himself, Black Lightning. I actually enjoyed the show Black Lightning. I thought it was pretty awesome and stuff. That's just me. I liked, you know, I wasn't a huge fan of his wife, to be honest. I wasn't a fan of Lynn. But his daughters, though, well, Jen, I wasn't really feeling her either, you know, Lightning. But Thunder, you know, and this, I thought she was pretty cool. And I actually enjoyed the show. You know, I enjoyed Jeff's rivalry with Tobias Well. I like Peter Gamby. I think they were all cool. Painkiller, that man he was a pretty awesome anti-hero type character. So, yeah, I think Black Lightning was a pretty good show to watch and stuff, you know. Another honorable mention I got to give is to Mr. Terrific. I think he was definitely a pretty cool character, especially even in this recent Superman movie. I think he was probably the only best part of the movie, in my opinion. I know that's saying a lot, or that's an opinion, but hey, I'm just being completely honest though. Um, Definitely made up for his poor portrayal inside Arrow and stuff. Um, of course, I learned of this character from Justice League Unlimited. He had a pretty cool design and everything, but he was kind of just a guy in the chair. He was kind of just taking Martian Manhunter's place after like season 3 or season 2 and stuff, where Martian Manhunter decided to just step down and like live his life and whatnot. So Mr. Terrific kind of just took that placement and stuff for a while, but he never really got like fleshed out or too much focus like that. You know what I'm saying? So, but I think it's pretty cool though. He is one of the smartest characters in the DC universe and whatnot, and I like his design. I was kind of revisiting the Injustice clip from that animated movie and stuff, even though the movie was pretty bad. And they kind of replaced the Flash for Mr. Terrific and stuff. Mr. Terrific actually had a pretty good scene with Superman where they're playing chess, and he's breaking down the reasons as to why Superman's plan for the regime and stuff just wouldn't work out and all of that. So that was pretty cool. But anyways, but yeah, Mr. Terrific. But yeah, and then last but not least, I also have another honorable mention. I have Karen Betchler, aka Bumblebee. Yep, from the Doom Patrol and from Teen Titans and stuff. I'm pretty sure you guys remember Bumblebee from the 2003 Teen Titans cartoon. I haven't really seen her in a lot of stuff, but I just thought maybe it might be worth mentioning Bumblebee, So, yeah, that's my list of, that's my Mount Rushmore for black superheroes in DC Comics. Tell me down below what you guys think. And again, do you guys have your own Mount Rushmore of favorite black superheroes, your non-black superheroes, white superheroes, whatever? I don't care. They could be Chinese, Japanese, Hispanic. I don't care. Tell me. But anyways, this is the Jello Fox. I'm out. Peace, and until we meet again. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart.